brush fire extends itself by proximity to a fuel source. If the fire cannot reach its next source of fuel in a chemical or molecular fire, then the fire goes out. Wind helps an outdoor fire spread by moving the fire to the fuel source. Stop that spread and you stop that fire. So the question is, how do we stop the ember flow? That is what the wind carries. The answer is a barrier to divide what will burn from what then will not burn. As depicted in the next little video segment, wind will push fire up a hill, thereby into the breeze, but that depends entirely upon the size of the hill and its, slope. Fire spread then depends upon the mass content of the ember escaping gravity to flow with the wind. Without enough fuel being carried by the ember, the mass of it, it cannot get hot enough to ignite even an easily flammable surface. Therefore, all that matters in a grassland fire is to contain what has enough gravity or is heavy enough to return to the earth in a hurry. 10 feet of cleared fuel source should easily do it. In most cases, depending upon the height of the actual fire. Before we begin, I remind you that universities and governments combined are trying to ignite an atomic fire just like on the sun, here on Earth. Every single day they try. They will accomplish that unless stopped. Their only theory for stopping an atomic fire that clearly burns atoms is, they say, not enough gravity here to sustain the fire. So it will just extinguish itself. The failure of that theory means this entire planet will burn just like the sun, because we cannot remove the fuel source when it's a 10 million degree fire and everything on Earth is fuel. Everything is an atom. They have proven already that fusion is a theory without substance at the National Ignition Facility. So think about it. 1 second too late, their ignition of an atomic fire means every life is lost, including yours. That said, the defense of forest or grassland from arsonists, primary cause today, begins with early detection and ends with the ability to clear an area of sufficient size quickly enough to remove fuel from the fire so it does not spread further. There are 3 distinct methods for this to create a controlled burn in the grass and brush, which can also get out of hand if not done correctly. Stopping that under serious conditions requires both equipment and human intervention. Removing trees, brush, and burnable fuels from the line of fire in a forest or grassland, creating a clearing so the fire stops. This requires machinery and human intervention. Creating a boundary that will stop ember flow and thereby eliminate the spread of fire, making the clearing of fuel sources much smaller. Today, they have to get enormous spaces to stop a fire. With a fire fence, they don't. That requires a new machine or similar as depicted on this film. Critical is early detection or monitoring stations. Primary to that purpose are the simplest methods possible, which include combining a smoke detector with a cell phone, pre-programmed to call a local 911 service. Lithium batteries do have a long life in these devices. Smoke wakes the alarm turns on the phone, which has been dormant. The phone dials a 911 button, including a code locating the device. This can be as simple as 2 solenoids, one to turn on the phone by pushing and holding the button, and one second button holding a pre-arranged 911 button. Wireless networks make that call in remote areas that would require a signal repeater. They are realistically cheap. Solar panels can operate the devices for years. And if you incorporate a camera on the awakened device, it can then collect or send video of the area and a road. That description of a device is entirely free to all. Use it any way you like. Fighting the fire itself requires stopping ember flow. 99% of all ember flow that has the potential to start another fire falls to the ground or is blown within 10 feet of that surface because it has mass fuel to burn, unless it is driven up a ramp such as a hill to become airborne again. Any ember that is blowing within a few feet of the ground surface can be stopped by a fire fence, as will be seen on the film. Solid fire fence below makes the fire stop. The screened area on top of the fire fence shown makes the wind lose its energy, containing embers within the fire fence itself by blowing through the screen. What the fire fence cannot do is create a control fire behind it, so that even the small amounts of tiny hot debris that will throw through it do not extend the fire. Additionally, if sitting on a burnable fuel source, this fire fence must be enclosed at the bottom so the fire does not burn under and then through. As seen in the machine description, the fire fence can easily extend it in a line that simply unloads from a trailer or other. To create the necessary removal of fuel from the fire and erect a fire fence, a small area must be cleared of fuel. For grassland fire, this is small because the fire is low. A small disc pulled by a tractor should be enough. In dangerous conditions, the fire fence must be erected first so as to give a stop, which can then be defended as best you can. If that is necessary, then the fire fence is then moved as necessary to the other side of the control burn, if you want to do that. In aid of this effort are the machines used by the lumber industry for brush removal. These machines can fall a tree in 2 minutes, or move it behind the control burn area, or tear up paths sufficiently wide in grassland areas to create a fuelless surface, or primarily. Very hard for the fire to spread on that. Human efforts in smaller versions of this are a chainsaw, gas cable winches, and electric generators to operate electric cable winches. Can be put in a truck. Even battery versions charged by all-terrain vehicles can be used. A tree is cut and a winch is tied to another tree or rock or stump, or anchored, or a truck or something. That equipment then pulls the cut tree or brush, etc. to safety behind the line. This takes human assistance, and all the people in the area who do need to assist. We don't have a lot of trees left. We don't have a lot of life in nature left. We need to save it. The machine pictured has a cutting tool on the front end of a relatively common loader. I build interchange as is useful to the work. Highway departments, farmers, businesses have these machines already available. The cutting tool depicted can also be attached to common excavators, making it reasonable to purchase or build, as all but the cutting tool is already in your possession. In grassland fire, and potentially useful in forest fire, is a fiberglass blanket which, when rolled out from a tractor or other, this then can cover a fuel source that slows the progression of fire and generally keeps it from igniting successfully. Such a blanket is to be used in creating your controlled burn area. If you want, always keep the exits cleared and defended by fire department trucks so you can't get trapped. A helicopter or plane in the area should be available as well, just in case, if it's a bad fire and you're trying to be up close. In a brush fire, a heavy steel cable is stretched between two bulldozers or the like and clear a large swath of standing brush or grass or that type of thing by reducing its height quickly, so as to reduce the size of the fire and its ability to throw embers, or actually to continue on. It will slow down if it's slow. That was a common method for clearing areas for interstate highway construction decades ago. The simple method is keep the fire low and it won't travel far with any realistic barrier to block its path. Reality further establishes that major hills which burn will burn upward first, dependent upon the wind. A prepared screen on the top of that hill will keep it from traveling to the other side. A helicopter placing a winch on top of that hill can bring a winching mechanism to use, which can then be anchored into the top of the hill, and the winch can then drag a fire fence up the hill to combat the influence of wind spreading the fire. Or a big helicopter can deliver a fire fence itself to the top of the hill, which can then be dragged down the hill. Although that would be probably, well, either way, it's a little bit of a problem keeping it upright, but you can do it. As has been proven for more than 1,000 years, terracing the hillside after it's been burned off, particularly in urban areas, will stop mudslides. Just do the work. Alright, this is a representation of what novice people out in the forest trying to stop a forest fire can use for cutting down trees. It is unwise to give people a chainsaw if they don't know how to use one or fall a tree. To cut the stumps low so the truck can get over it, it's best to have a four-wheel drive truck with a better big tires and suited for the purpose, or a tractor. This is just an extension in front of the truck to hold it. It's used for a different purpose, actually. But you do need to protect the radiator, because as you're going along, the last thing you want is to have the radiator punctured by a limb or something. So this is what it looks like. The guy in the truck controls how far it goes forward. The people that are towing the ropes, they direct him to adjust to the place where he can actually cut the tree. Well, they can cut the tree. The person in the truck turns on the chainsaw. There's a generator in the back end of the truck. I don't have one in it. I'm not going to show you. Just consider a chainsaw back, or a generator back there, with an extension cord that goes all the way out to the front, and a switch inside the truck cab so that he can actually turn it on and turn it off. If we grab the rope, we can pull the chainsaw into the tree, thereby cutting it. We also keep tension on the chainsaw so that it continues its cut. And the guy in the truck is far enough back so that all but really large trees will not hit him. So if you have a really large tree that you have to cut, then you have to be able to back up in a hurry, so stay out from behind the truck. And as far as the guys that are pulling the rope, these ropes can be as long as you want them to be. In other words, you can easily get yourself out of the way if you're the one pulling the truck, or pulling the rope here and running the chainsaw actually. You can cut on both sides of the chainsaw, but on the back side of it, you'll ruin the bar much faster. So it's not advisable. It does have to be cut low enough to get the truck over it. Alright, so this tree is not really a lumber tree. The base is fairly big. It's about 50 years old. But the base is only 5 foot tall, well 6 foot till it gets smaller. The only good lumber in here is the spike going up the center, and it only represents about maybe 8 2x8s or so. Looks to be 12 feet long, or thereabouts, unless you actually cut into the main trunk down here as well. Then you can get a 16s out of it, maybe a little bit more. That's about all this tree will yield. This is an old tree, but it's got a lot of damage to it. 100 plus. It won't yield a whole lot of lumber, mostly because a lot of the trunk and a lot of the mass is ruined by rot. This is a 40-year-old tree. It's about 24 inches wide, which means that at 24 inches it would yield about 12 2x12s and about another 12 2x6s. Unlike my dad and almost all Americans, pretty soon you are not going to be able to go to the store and just get more. That day is gone. Alright, well, that remark about the university is primarily led by their current evaluation of the emerald ash borer. It says, well, instead of waiting for a tree to see whether or not it has a specific genetic trait to survive that borer, the university answer is, let's cut down every ash tree there is. There's also the fact that all the trees on this particular place, or half of them at least, are suffering due to climate change. They are stressed, and if they have any problems whatsoever, that shows up. Climate change is a direct result of air conditioning, especially because that releases an incredible amount of heat. That's how you air condition. You create more heat. The reality of that stress is like a common cold in the wintertime. It's not the cold weather that gives you a cold, nasal congestion and so forth. It's the fact that cold weather puts more stress on your body, requires more energy to survive, and that leaves less energy for your immune system to fight any kind of infection of any kind that you have.